From an investor point of view, what will you be looking for in today's flight, the 737 MAX, back in the air?
Thanks, Seema, and good morning. Well, the point here is that there was a certain amount of inevitability to the MAX flying again, although it's clearly been a very long period of inevitability. So really the focus at this point is making sure the MAX goes back in the air without a hitch, and all the systems that have been redesigned and redeveloped are properly done so, and that's probably going to be the case here. And as Phil said, over time, the MAX will replace the NG, and that should be done with it. So you really want to see a flawless re-entry into service, which is a challenge given all of the groundings that have got the lengthy grounding that we've gone through. But clearly a positive day for Boeing, the company, to get this thing back flying in the United States.
Boeing has had its fair share of headlines, but none like the ones revolving around the 737 MAX over the last 2 years. The grounding, Dennis Muhlenberg, then you think they brought in Dave Calhoun, the pandemic. It's really been nonstop. Set the scene for us. I mean, how big of a moment is this for Boeing and for its profit picture, which certainly has suffered recently because of the pandemic?
Well, I mean, quite frankly, getting, again, as I said, getting the plane back flying in the United States was a certain amount of inevitability to it, especially after the FAA released the grounding last month. So sentiment-wise, I think this has been a long time coming, but I emphasize a long time coming. The problems and the challenges do persist thereafter, and we still have almost a record production rate ramp up over the next year plus. The inventory to clear out, 787 production to move. And also a portfolio to readdress in terms of its competitiveness versus Airbus at the high end of the narrow body. So I'd say that there's still a lot of things, a lot of wood for Boeing to chop. This is one step along a very long path.
Yeah, and airlines also face the challenge of getting travelers comfortable getting on the flight. There was a recent study sort of, gauging interest from the public on whether they feel comfortable getting on a 737 MAX. How do you see that playing out over the coming months?
To some extent, I think that the bigger news of COVID, which has clearly had a global impact on travel, has somewhat overshadowed the specific MAX issues. I mean, it's almost hard to believe that it's been as long as it has been that the MAX has been grounded. So I would expect that folks would, over time, I would say, grow increasingly comfortable with the MAX if it is proven to fly well and reliably in the air. And you would think that after this long of a grounding and this much work that's gone into rectified, that would indeed be the case. There could be some intransigence among customers around flying the MAX initially, but quite frankly, that period coincides with intransigence among customers to fly initially, just given the state of the world, the pandemic viral spikes across the nation, across the globe. So it's going to be hard, I think, to sort of pull apart those two items. And when you see a broader era recovery, could coincide with the time that folks generally are more comfortable in general flying on the MAX. But I think you'll still find a lot of folks willing to fly on the MAX even today, if they're willing to fly at all.
And following this flight, you have United saying they plans to do sometime in the next 3 months. Southwest anticipating to do so in the spring to bring that 737 MAX to air. What does this mean for some of the other suppliers? Even General Electric. I'm thinking they, of course, specialize in that LEAP engine.
Yeah, so the challenge with the MAX grounding for the entire time of the grounding, since March of 2019, has been creating some production stability in the system. And clearly that there's been a lot of dynamics around there, only exacerbated by COVID. So getting the plane certified again is a good step to get some certainty for the airlines to start demanding the aircraft, which will help clear the inventory, which will help raise production rates, which is good for the supply chain, like GE, like Spirit AeroSystems. And many others, quite frankly. I think one of the challenges, however, is getting the plane flying, and that's great. But pre-pandemic, the case was we need as many planes as we can because demand is quite insatiable for these planes. Post-pandemic, or I'd say in pandemic, there's not as much demand for airplanes, not as much demand for capacity or lift. So what was strictly a supply issue pre-pandemic is now a bit of a demand issue. So you still have to so you still have to think about the demand issue in aerospace, in travel. Yeah. And that's the piece that has to fall into place.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.